If you've ever owned a Nintendo system, you know exactly what Smash Bros. Is. The party fighting game fusion has become so recognizable that just the flash of its logo is enough to inspire some intense reactions. The history of Super Smash Bros. Defies the typical sequel progression of video games, and Smash is making its mark on esports in a way no other Nintendo property has. Hey everyone, I'm Adrian with the Leaderboard, and with Smash for Switch burning at the forefront of everyone's minds, let's take a look at Super Smash Bros. Then versus now. Smash 64. While the idea of taking the best of the best characters from Nintendo and putting them in a fighting arena seems obvious now, Super Smash Bros. Wasn't even originally developed with its central attraction in mind. The game we now know as Super Smash Bros. Started life as a fighting game named Kakuto Geimu Ryo, or Dragon King the Fighting Game. The mind behind it was Masahiro Sakurai, who you might know as the creator of Kirby. In 1998, Sakurai decided that he wanted to tackle the fighting game market, an area he saw as oversaturated and in need of a shakeup. Although the hook of Nintendo's best hadn't been thought up yet, Sakurai already had a selling point, the unique platform-based gameplay that Smash has become known for, which eschews fighting games' traditional HP bars and complex inputs in favor of a positional brawl with a universal control scheme taking advantage of the Nintendo 64's analog stick controller. It was with this concept that Sakurai went to the future president of Nintendo and all-around legend Satoru Iwata, who encouraged him to pursue the concept further. But Sakurai knew he needed another way to make his concept stand out. At the time, his fighter was pretty simple and lacked defining characteristics, much like Kirby. However, Kirby was just so darn cute that he could get away with it. Instead of making another game filled with amorphous pink matter, Sakurai had a stroke of genius. He would fill his fighting game with Nintendo's most popular characters. The only issue was that HAL was a second-party developer. So, Sakurai developed the game without informing Nintendo he was using their intellectual property until he had a working prototype. The prototype featured Donkey Kong, Samus, Fox McCloud, and of course, Mario as its playable characters. Sakurai's gamble paid off, and his idea was approved, and Super Smash Bros. Was released to minimal fanfare. At least at first. Sakurai may have pulled off a coup with his do first, ask questions later tactic, but Super Smash Bros. Got a meager budget to be split between development and promotion. As such, the original Super Smash Bros. Came without much of the window dressing we've come to expect from fighting games. It featured only a short campaign mode with minimal story and a few minigames, with its bare-bones one-player mode being the focus of most of the initial criticism. But duking it out as Nintendo Legends was quite a draw. Smash 64 sold nearly 2 million copies in Japan, and another 3 million once it received an international release. The core gameplay was just that good. The original game featured a starting cast of 8 characters consisting of Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, Yoshi, Kirby, Fox, and Pikachu, and had 4 secret unlockable characters as well: Luigi, Captain Falcon, Ness, and Jigglypuff. For Nintendo, it was a dream come true. A new hit franchise that also served as a marketing mechanism for its other series. You came for the Mario and stayed for the Captain Falcon, or the Ness, if you were that kind of kid. It's no surprise that development on a sequel started soon after. Melee. Smash 64's follow-up had a big job. It wasn't only tasked with being a worthy successor to its surprise hit parent, but it also had to serve as a poster child for the upcoming GameCube console. This resulted in an unenviable 13-month development cycle for Sakurai and his team. Over that short period, they worked with 3 separate graphics houses to produce the full motion video intro, which was designed to highlight the GameCube's vastly improved visual capabilities. But after a grueling year, Super Smash Bros. Melee was released, and that's where things really took off. Melee's single-player mode was hugely expanded, with single-player options comprising an advanced classic mode, challenging event matches, new adventure and all-star modes, a home run contest, personalized target tests for each characters, and unlockable trophies with info about items and characters from the games. And if the single player expanded, multiplayer exploded. While the original Smash featured 20 items to amp up action, Melee bumped that number to 35. The music went from jaunty synth piano to swelling orchestral covers of beloved classics. 9 stages became 29 stages, and most importantly, the number of characters grew from 12 to 26, more than doubling the first game. Melee features characters from across 11 different series. It even included Marth and Roy from Fire Emblem, a well-known series in Japan that, at the time, hadn't been released in the US. Melee was, if you'll excuse the pun, a smash. It became the GameCube's best-selling game by far. At one point, it was estimated that 70% of all GameCube owners owned Melee. Gameplay-wise, Melee featured an engine that, while bearing passing resemblance to the original, was a wholly new beast. Shielding became far stronger, but so did characters' movement options, meaning fights were fast-paced and frenetic. In fact, too frenetic for some critics. Melee gave players greater control over what direction their character was sent flying after a hit, which led to a layer of interactive gameplay that has defined the series to this day. And the addition of more defensive techniques such as sidesteps and air dodges changed the game completely, even in ways that weren't intended. It's here that we address one of the most legendary techniques in fighting game history and start to unravel the Ouroboros that is Smash's history. Late in the development process, Sakurai and co. discovered that by angling an air dodge into the ground immediately after jumping, a player could use their stored momentum to slide across the ground. Although they'd identified this anomaly as a bug, they made the decision to leave it in, thinking it would have a small impact on gameplay. Little did they know that that technique would become not just one of the most central techniques in Melee, but would create a conflict that almost tore the competitive scene apart. These days, we call it a wave dash. The competitive scene. Super Smash Bros. May be a fun game to play with friends, but it is, at its roots, like most fighting games, a competition. Since the dawn of Smash Bros., players have set out to get as good as possible. Competitive players typically play with different rules, which include disabling items, only fighting on certain stages, and playing with a specific amount of stocks, or lives. While this might sound restrictive on paper, the idea was to minimize chance in a game that wasn't strictly designed for serious competition. Super Smash Bros. Has developed its own competitive scene, which some other fighting game players have sometimes looked down on it as a party game that got too big for its britches. But that community isn't necessarily united. To this day, people still play Smash 64 competitively, and the same holds true for Melee. There is, of course, crossover. Melee legend Joel Isai Alvaro was originally a 64 main, and after retiring from Melee has continued to pursue that as his primary game. But that's the rub. Smashers have primary games, not usually a mastery over the whole series, usually. We'll get to that later. So the title Then versus Now might mean something a little different than what you might expect, because we're not just going from one game to the next, and then forget about the prequel, because people are still playing those games, sometimes more than the sequels. And that's how we get to Brawl. Sakurai quit HAL due to a case of sequelitis, and after the intense workload from Melee, so Smash fans weren't sure they would get another installment of their beloved series. But then, at a 2005 press conference, Satoru Iwata announced Super Smash Bros. Brawl, stunning the world, including Masahiro Sakurai, who hadn't signed on yet despite being told that any sequel would feature him as a director. Guess Iwata took a page out of the shoot first and ask questions later playbook, huh? Sakurai ended up signing on as director, but Brawl took a full 3 years to develop, plagued by delays the whole way through. During the wait, anticipation grew to a fever pitch, spurred on in part by the return of the Smash Dojo website, a hub on which Sakurai and team would announce such savory tidbits such as items, stages, new characters, and even fun facts, like the fact that Sakurai himself was voice acting King DDD. By the time Brawl released, there was a near frenzy. The game released to the highest opening sales of a game in Nintendo's history, reaching 1.4 million units in the United States in just 1 week. By the end of 2008, it had hit 5 million worldwide. Just like Melee, Sakurai managed to expand the series further in Brawl. It featured a total of 39 characters, 18 of them newcomers. If you're checking my math, Pichu, Mewtwo, Dr. Mario, and Roy took a vacation, while Young Link became Toon Link. That included the first ever third-party characters, Solid Snake and Sonic the Hedgehog. I won't list off the expansion stats again, but one of Brawl's most notable features was the most robust single-player mode yet, Subspace Emissary. Now with a whole new story that somehow managed to incorporate every playable Smash character, and even Rayquaza? Adding to the action were dramatic final smashes, a sort of finisher move each character could use by breaking a glowing, moving version of the series' iconic logo. The game also added assist trophies, a special item that would summon a computer-controlled character from one of the numerous series present to fight alongside you. Other notable features are the custom stage builder and online gaming, aspects becoming standard in the gaming world at this time. Unfortunately, Brawl's attempts at online gaming had a few issues, but the game was still received well. It even got a perfect score from Japanese gaming magazine Famitsu. But while the critics raved, not all were happy. The split. 64 players and Melee players were two distinct communities that shared a friendly rapport. Brawl's release, however, created a division that was anything but cordial. Brawl's game engine seemed almost opposite to Melee's. Where Melee had traded in razor-sharp movement, Brawl featured a cast that was altogether floatier and slower. Comboing felt completely different, as characters would fall out of the elaborate sequences that would have worked in Melee. Techniques to speed up gameplay from Melee in Smash 64, such as canceling the lag of aerials, were absent. Wave dashing had disappeared, and then of course, there was tripping. For those of you that haven't played Brawl, in Brawl, there's a chance a character might trip while performing different moves. Naturally, for competitive players, a completely random chance that they might fall to their enemy's mercy was not the greatest draw. Competitive Brawl players circumvented this issue by minimalizing unnecessary tripping, but perhaps more important than tripping itself was what it signaled to the community, that Sakurai didn't want competitive Smash to exist. When questioned about the hardcore competitive scene fueling Melee, Sakurai goes between vague answers and outright regret. While he maintained the line that everyone should play the way they want, many in the Melee community saw Brawl as a way for competitive Smash to die out in favor of taking its place as a party game. He's even gone as far as saying, Melee basically ended up becoming a Smash Bros. Game for hardcore fighting fans. I personally regret that. Based on all of this, it may make it sound like no one played Brawl, but that's absolutely not true. The game developed a devoted competitive fan base just like Melee before it, and even replaced Melee at EVO, the world's biggest fighting game tournament. The issue was that for many, Brawl didn't scratch the itch Melee did, and so the two scenes interacted in a way that ranged from barely associated to outright hostile. Of course, that didn't help either game's scene out that much. Melee lost the support it had from organizations like MLG and EVO, and Brawl was painted as a casual game even by other Smashers, compounding the casual perception other fighting game players might have had. It was a dark era for Melee. And while Brawl thrived for a while, it suffered from balancing issues that made it hard for it to succeed. There was little crossover. That is, until Project M. Even those Melee lovers who couldn't jive with Brawl's systems had to admit that the expansion of characters and stages was remarkable. And for some enterprising fans, there was no reason that it had to be separate from the gameplay they knew. Because Brawl included the option to load stages from an SD card, players could load other data onto the SD card to be read. This exploit made the game incredibly plastic and moddable, to the extent that it spawned the forgotten child of Smash's history, Project M. With the goal of keeping Brawl's huge roster but emulating the gameplay they loved, the Project M team crafted their entire game, frequently patching the game and even adding back characters like Roy, Dr. Mario, and Mewtwo. Entire characters' movesets were reworked for the game, which enjoyed a healthy competitive scene for much of its existence, even drawing top Melee players to compete in it. Tripping was gone, wave dashing was back, and you could still play as Snake. Project M got over 3 million downloads in its history and went down as one of the most popular fan mods ever, but its existence was troubled. It was an unauthorized mod, and Nintendo was notoriously protective of its IP. When there was minimal attention on the competitive scene, this wasn't a huge deal, but a bigger spotlight meant more eyes watching. The revival. The battle between the Melee and Brawl scenes, combined with Brawl's struggles to stay competitively relevant, meant the scene was at an all-time low going into 2012. Brawl was only featured on the EVO roster for a single year before being dropped, and the Smash community came to think of its days on big stages as a past glory. But in 2013, EVO held a donation drive to choose the last game on its roster, and with a monumental surge of community funding, it was Melee, not Brawl, that made it in. Nintendo even tried to block EVO from streaming Melee, but the community managed to convince Big N to back down. Suddenly, Smash had more attention than it had in years, and combined with the release of a new documentary detailing the competitive Melee scene storylines, The Smash Brothers, the game experienced a huge resurgence in popularity. With that popularity, Brawl all but died out, though to be fair, interest in the game was already dwindling. The larger victim was Project M, which, as the awkward cousin of the bunch, couldn't party with any Nintendo attention. That scene dwindled as well, with a particularly harsh blow coming in December 1st, 2015, when the dev team abruptly announced they were halting work on the game. Although they maintained that they didn't receive a cease and desist, they've said that they stopped to avoid future legal action. So it's safe to assume Nintendo might have been involved. Project M still exists to this day through a small but dedicated fan base. But for Melee, things were amazing. The game was more popular than it's ever been. Derisive shouts at party games still existed, but what was once a niche community was revived. Melee was the third most entered game at both EVO 2013 and 2014, coming only behind Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Street Fighter 4. It was third in 2015 too, but a different game had taken second that year. Smash 4. Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U, let's call them Smash 4 from now on, were officially announced at E3 2013 and released in fall of 2014. New features included new characters, new stages, new music, you get it. Unique features included the ability to play with up to 8 competitors, taking advantage of the Wii U's multiple controller possibilities, the addition of Mii fighters, and amiibo support, in which you could train a CPU fighter to become smarter and level up. Also new to the series was the ability to modify characters with custom special moves. Smash 4 is also the first Smash game, aside from Project M, to feature patch updates. These included additional stages, and most excitingly, post-launch DLC characters. These included characters people had been begging to see in the series, like Cloud, new Nintendo IPs like Corrin from Fire Emblem, and even Roy, Dr. Mario, and Mewtwo back from their vacation. And this isn't mentioned in the script, but Lucas came back from Brawl, because thank God. Also, goodbye Ice Climbers. While Smash 4 has finished patching for a while, it also featured actual balance changes to characters, which to many represents Sakurai and Nintendo's realization that the competitive scene will always be a primary part of the game's fanbase. At the Smash 4 Invitational, Smash pros and community leaders alike were invited to try the new game in a semi-serious competition, perhaps finally acknowledging the competitive scene. In keeping with that, Smash 4 also marks a middle ground between Brawl's floaty gameplay and the oil-slick pace of Melee, so Sakurai could stick to "this game is for everyone" line, but still give a nod to the competitive community. Concrete changes to the game included the ability to grab a ledge even if someone else is holding it, and a mechanic called Rage, in which characters with higher damage will get a boost to their knockback power. That middle ground paid off. Smash 4 has become a competitive hit, and it's been the second most played game at EVO in the years since its release. Unlike the dark times, both Melee and Smash 4 coexist at EVO, no longer needing to fight each other for attention. Smash 4's pro scene has a healthy dose of ex-Brawl players who all pretty much moved on to the new game, but there's also a lot of young blood gunning to be the best. There are even players who used to be Melee professionals and now pursue Smash 4, like Larry Lur, but the days of feuding are over, and Smash as a whole has enjoyed huge growth over the past 5 years. Now, which brings us finally to the now. So where are we in the present day? Smash is still bigger than ever. Every game is still played competitively from 64 to 4, although in the case of Project M, they have to do it in backrooms, and Brawl may only have a few devotees left. And that's why then versus now is a bit hard. Even the oldest game in the series drew 238 entrants in 2015 at the Smash-centric tournament Genesis 3. Melee is finally raising the money the scene never thought it had, and Smash 4 is opening tournaments at dedicated esports venues across the country. Smash for Switch is on the horizon, although some are skeptical that it might be a new game or a port. I mean, that's still up for debate, right guys? Right? We Smash fans at least know there are going to be new characters. The Wii U was Nintendo's biggest flop in decades, and we saw just how much attention that brought to the scene. One can only imagine what the uptick will be when the game's on their fastest selling console of all time. And to make matters even more exciting, Nintendo finally seems to understand that people enjoy competition, even instating a new wing called Nintendo Versus to promote tournaments. In fact, another invitational is coming where we'll see pro players duke it out in the new game. Will Smash 4 players move to the new game? Could old standbys receive entire reworks in light of their new games? Will Melee HD ever be released? For years, question and doubts were all Smash had as it sustained itself through sheer force of will and a community's love. But for now, the future looks bright. Thanks for watching. I'm Adrian with The Leaderboard, your home for video game facts. Check out The Leaderboard esports to get your competitive fix, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon to become part of the notification squad.